Yep. Right on the button. Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Sedro-Woolley City Council. Please rise for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you got enough bucks. Okay. Oh, in what, football? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know it. Okay, the council knows the drill on the consent calendar. If there's something you'd like to discuss further, let me know and we'll speak more about it. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve item A through F.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar A through F.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Galbraith, a second by Councilmember Cornegay to approve the consent calendar A through F. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, passes unanimous. Okay, we're at public comment time. This is something that you'd speak about that's not on the agenda. State your name and address for the record. And
You make note that
Brett's, yeah, they'll know. He might be late.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie, this is Jed.
And your name and where you live at, her address.
I'm Mackenzie, and this is Jed. We live at 10225 Warfield Road, Sedro-Woolley.
Okay.
So we recently opened a store in downtown Sedro where we're selling wood furniture, and we also have a space for local artists and craftsmen. And we've also recently applied for a marijuana retail license in Sedro-Woolley at 707 Metcalf Street. Our vision is to create a very classy, tasteful establishment like we've done with our current shop. And we love the downtown Sedro-Woolley atmosphere, and so we want to be able to continue its growth in every way we can. Having a retail shop downtown will draw in a new type of tourist, the outdoor enthusiasts, the road trippers and campers traveling on Highway 20. And then also all the locals that currently have to leave downtown in order to pick up their recreational or medical products. So welcoming this type of customer will encourage more shopping at other retail stores and dining at any of our restaurants down here. And while it's legal to open a recreational marijuana store in the state, it does have its boundaries. And right now, the legislation gives local government the ability to reduce the previous 1,000-foot buffer to 100 feet around entities, with the exception of elementary schools, secondary schools, and public playgrounds. So our prospective location is within 1,000 feet, or puts us within 1,000 feet of the Hammer Heritage Square. However, we would meet the 100-foot requirement. Given that our local government is able to make the call, we want to bring this idea to light to have you consider it. It's an opportunity we're excited about, and we think it would encourage downtown's growth.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any more public comment? No? Well, this time we'll close the public comment and we'll go to the public hearing on the property tax levy ordinance. And this will be Patsy. Second reading.
Sample ordinances in your packet. Can't hear me.
Your mic's not on.
Mike's not on.
We go. The sample ordinances in your packet are the same ones which were in the last council meeting packet. On page 35 is the Skagit County Assessor's preliminary assessed valuation report showing what they imagine Sedro-Woolley taxpayers' properties will be assessed at, as well as value of new construction and other interesting facts. And then On the next page, page 36, is the assessor's calculation if the council were to take the full 1% allowed in 2016, as well as previously banked amounts. There's their calculation of how much revenue as well as what percent of increase. That's page 36 of the council packet. If the council were to levy 1%, that would be almost $18,000 of additional property tax. This year, because of a low IPD calculation by the Department of Revenue, it would require 2 ordinances. The samples of that are in your packet. The first one would be the amount of the IPD, and then the second ordinance would declare a substantial need to have the full 1%. And that second ordinance would require a supermajority, which would be a majority of the council plus 1. And then also the third ordinance is if the council were to choose to take the maximum allowed. The mayor had instructed staff to complete the preliminary budget based on a property tax increase of 0, which is also a sample ordinance in your packet. Banking is always an interesting topic, so I just wanted to spend a couple moments to go over the banking rules as they were explained to me by the assessor's office. If the council wishes to bank capacity for the future and not increase property taxes this year, you would need to approve an ordinance for 1% and then instruct myself to actually request a lower amount. If you do not wish to bank capacity this year, you would either take the full 1%, which would leave nothing left to bank, or you would approve an increase of 0%. According to Washington State Department of Revenue, no one has the authority to delete prior banked capacity. That can only be basically go away when it's taken. You can not bank any year by year, but you can't do anything about the prior amount. And November 30th is the deadline that we must submit our property tax requests to the county. So we do need to have an ordinance approved before that date. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them before the mayor opens the public hearing.
Reading through this, which 38, 39, or 40, 41, or 42, which one is 0 with no bank?
0 with no banking would be the ordinance that begins on page 38.
Okay. And then the one that starts on 40, what's it do?
40 is the first of 2 necessary ordinances to take 1%. The one beginning on page 40 would increase property taxes by the amount of the IPD, which is something like implicit price deflator? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
We haven't done a public hearing.
That's right. Sorry.
I got a question. In the years earlier, when there was the bank that was left in there, and what is that now? Is that a dollar figure or a percentage figure?
It's a little confusing to me. I believe it is a percentage figure.
So that would continue for, even though our city could get huge, then 2% of our property value, assessed value from way back in 1980 would be work for 2050?
Just imagine if you'd saved $10,000 in 1980 money, what it'd be worth today.
Well, that's not what I want to hear.
That's not what we're doing.
But what I'm saying is it should be the dollar figure and then when you tap into it, you divide it by the higher assessment you got and more things built, and it would be a lesser amount.
And it stays.
The assessor's office calculates it every year, and they're saying that the city has $43,583 in banked capacity.
So that's what goes. It doesn't get bigger. I mean, 10 years from now, if we don't do a thing, that 43 might become 89.
I think it gets bigger.
Well, one way to tell would be, what was it last year? Which I'm sure you don't have with you, do you?
Because every year your
I'll
city
look.
gets more houses built, more assessed values, so now you're, okay, that's just something I never thought of till now. Okay, we'll open the public, any questions? Okay, we are opening the public hearing on the property tax levy ordinance, and this is for someone that wants to come speak, and we'll open it at 7:10. I guess we're going to close it real quick. We'll wait. We'll close it at about a 7:11. It's about 8 seconds from now. And Council, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve Ordinance 1828-15, an ordinance of the City of Sedro-Woolley approving the property tax levy at an increase of 0%.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Councilmember Galbraith and a second by Councilmember Kinzer to approve Ordinance 1828-15, an ordinance for the City of Sedro-Woolley approving the property tax levy at an increase of 0% on page 38. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, that passes. All right, we will go to unfinished business, item 6, sewer strength, and this would be Katie.
And I've got some late materials I'll hand out to from Katie. Before we get started, Kevin Wynn from our sewer plant is here tonight, and I thought we would start with him, specifically looking at the question. So you may recall that we've seen Katie a couple times this year addressing the issue of volume-based billing for residences. We've moved through that conversation, and we understand that that's not something the council wants to do. So what was left on the table from the earlier conversation was what to do about strength. So before we jump into Katie's presentation, if it's all right, I'd like to have Kevin come in and come up to the mic and show you a couple of samples from the laboratory. Kevin, for those of you who don't know, has been with our sewer plant for, what, about 2 years?
Yeah, almost 3.
Almost 3 years. But grew up in a sewer plant, several of them actually. So
That sounds funny.
He was practically born into the industry, and has worked at a number of plants and has managed plants. So he brings a wealth of experience to our plant, and next to Debbie has got the highest certification for operating a plant, and currently is running our lab.
So I got these samples here to kind of show BOD, TSS loading, if you will. I'll give it to you guys here. So there's these two. There's these two.
Yeah, you can tell the difference, we can't.
Yeah. So the funny thing about those is one of them, they're the same amount. They look the same, but the strength is, one of them's 0, one of them's 600.
You can see a little bit of sediment in one of them.
Yeah. And the other ones are actually TSS, which is the solids that come through the plant. And one of them's coming in, which is the influent one, and one of them's going to be the one coming out for effluent. So BOD loading is kind of the tricky one, I think. So basically, it's a measurement of the demand for oxygen to biologically break down organics that come into the plant. Another way to put it, or an easier way to look at it, is for the bugs in the plant, they take a bite of food, they take a bite of air. So the more food that comes in, the more air they need, which is process stuff that we have to change as far as turning on rotors for more air, which is power directly. TSS is more of a solid. It's kind of grit and stuff like that, so that's more screenings, stuff like that, and all these things factor into loading of a plant, and they're basically set up to take X amount of loading throughout a period when they were designed for their design criteria, and more loading basically increases that and can increase costs, and you can get into design modifications and stuff like that with more that comes in. So one business could come in and discharge say a high BOD and basically knock the plant up to operating at more of its design criteria. So that's pretty much it, unless there's any questions.
No, I just wanted the council to be able to see visually what we're talking about when Katie looks at different classifications for business types that contribute differently to the sewer system and why it actually has an impact in the sewer plants.
Right. Yeah, so a 300 BOD is similar to what we get normally coming into the plant. Anything above that gets to be fairly strong and requires a lot of process changes, whether it's more aeration, which is directly power, or chemicals, or some other type of treatment. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It should work.
Good evening, council and mayor and public. I wanted to talk tonight about the commercial volume-based sewer rates, the potential for this. This would be just for commercial customers. Let's see if this is working. And so just for commercial customers, as Aaron said, we discussed earlier, I was here in the summer talking about residential, and the thought on commercial was, right now, you charge your commercial customers, all pay a base rate that's the same as residential. So everyone in the city pays the same base rate. And for commercial, that includes the first 750 cubic feet of water. Anything over that, they pay a volume rate. Okay, so regardless of whether you were the plain water or the sugar water, no matter what your BOD is, you're paying the same base rate, and you're paying for your water at the same rate. Okay? Now, the city has code descriptions of what is excessive waste or strength and what is average strength. And the cutoff there is 500. So you have language in your code that describes this, and also excessive flow. But what it doesn't say is how to charge them or whether you should charge them any different. So what it says is they have to come and get a special waste permit and talk to the city and work out and make sure everybody understands what's coming in. Now the question is, do you want to add some sort of charges for the variation in strength? Your thing is... Okay. High tech now. So what we did, you are required to do every few years an industrial survey and report. So Debbie Allen had this. It was last done in 2012. And you have to go through all the businesses in the city and fill out a little survey, what sort of things, equipment is inside that would have to do with, do you have a grease trap, these different sort of elements. So it hasn't been updated recently, but it was something for us to start with, to look at the commercial customers that you have. There was 138 of them, and then what we did was put them in classes, a best guess category, and here are the pie charts. On the left is the number of accounts, and on the right is the cubic feet of water in these different categories. So we have low, medium, high. You have nothing at very high, and there's about 8% of the counts that are either unknown or combined. So this is and again, the importance is as you get higher BOD and TSS, which are totally technical terms, which Kevin very helpfully described.
What does combined consist of?
The combined, I'm going to give you some examples. That's a good question. On the next slide, here are some the examples where you have a multi-use building and there's a number of businesses that are in that. They're all sharing a water meter. So if we were to classify all of them, we would only have one water meter to classify. So here's a multi-use building with a restaurant. We have another one that includes a restaurant and a mini market. You've got one that has the Subway, the Papa Murphy's, the Credit Union, Teriyaki Bar.
So down the page, you'll answer my own question.
So in this, we would propose, if you do have a strength-based charge, that it would be that meter would be charged at whatever the highest strength there is in the building. So let's talk about the categories and how we broke down the categories. Sedro-Woolley is not the only one to talk about this, and later I'll give you some other local jurisdictions. And everyone who does strength-based, of course, everyone is a little bit different in how they define it and how they implement it. And what we did was take a look at Lake Haven Utility District is one that has a very good list. They have 5 categories that they split things out into, but their list has the type of business, and they're out of Federal Way, so you can picture they have every type of business down there in Federal Way. So it was very helpful for us to go through and use that. And then we looked at the BOD and TSS numbers because we wanted to simplify it, and we ended up with low, medium, high, and then very high would be something like a meat processor or food processing. That would be very high, and you would want them to come in and talk to the city and negotiate what those discharges could be and how that works. So for each of these, we have a list of the types of businesses that are in there. So the low, you can picture, would be offices, domestic type strength, so flushing toilets, washing hands, that kind of thing. Medium is, a step up from that, so that's like a pub, something where there is not food service. They're not preparing food. Okay, as we go higher, then the high category is, restaurants, hospitals that are preparing food, that type of food preparation. That's what really drives up when you think about the typical city. Again, the very high, we would have, you would want to negotiate with those and be very clear about what they could send and what sort of pretreatment might be necessary. So let's talk the strength-based alternative. So here is what we came up with in a way that it could work here. And at the top of the page is the scenario. At the bottom of the page is some example customers. We looked at 2 example customers for low, medium, and high. All right? And this, I think, is very helpful for you to see what happens. Essentially, right now, because everybody is being charged the same, it's like the average. They're all being charged the average. So if we start breaking them out into low, medium, and high, and we're allocating and charging those costs accordingly, the low would go down, the medium would stay the same, and the high would go up. And so this is what happens. So if you think about just an office or a toilet type of use, they would go down, and the restaurants and the hospitals, they would go up. So as we calculated with the base, the best that we could, we came up with, again, I think the base rate should stay the same as residential. And this shows that you would get 750 cubic feet. This is the same as is currently offered. And the low would be $4, the medium would be $5.40, and the high would be $7. Okay? So when you look at the bottom, you can see that the low, like the Boys and Girls Club, they're only at 700 cubic feet, so they just pay the base rate. That would stay the same, just the base rate. The general office, they would get a decrease as that volume rate went down. The two medium customers would pay the same, and the drugstore and the hair salon. And then as we got up to the restaurant and the hospital, they would pay more. And how much more depends on how much water you have and discharge into the sewer. Okay? So the next alternative, remember back when we were talking residential and we did a fair amount of work to figure out what the average residence uses, and it was 550 cubic feet. So when we were discussing the residential side, we came to the conclusion that it would be fair to adjust commercials so that only 550 cubic feet were included in the base rate. So I wanted to run you a scenario with that so that we, complete our thinking. It's a little more complex than the straight one we just talked about, because in here, everyone would be paying for an additional 200 cubic feet. Right? The base rate would be the same, and they'd all be paying for 200 cubic feet additional. So it sort of makes it not as clear that the low would go down and the high would go up. But again, that's what happens, as well as paying for that 200 cubic feet. So the next slide is really the comparison, so you can see side by side for the 700 cubic feet or 500 cubic feet included in the base. In this, I'm looking at one customer that uses 900 cubic feet to be, to have apples to apples, so you could see what happens. And on the left is with 700 cubic feet, and you can see the low goes down and the high goes up. About $2, a little over $2. You either get reduced or you pay more, and the medium pays the same. On the right is the 550 cubic feet included in the base, and everyone will have an increase, but the low goes up $5 to $6. The medium is the $10, and then the high is up higher than that. So those are the two alternatives that we looked and ran through. So the conclusion is that the rate would result in changes to the customer bills, and the savings would be to the low customers, and the high strength customers would pay more. And we've heard about how that impacts the strength, impacts the cost of operating the plant. Again, we'd have to think about implementation issues. There's about 138 accounts, and we have a preliminary classification on most of them. There was 8% of the accounts still need to be looked at and figured out. Patsy would have to do some modifications to the billing system and think about how to notify customers. I think it's always helpful for you to see what what local jurisdictions are doing. I don't think you should base your rates on what others are doing, but it's helpful information to see if businesses were choosing one community versus another. And we can see that Burlington, this is comparing Sedro-Woolley's existing, but Burlington has the 3 different categories, and businesses are classified in there, and then they're charged, and their base rate and their volume rate varies. Then we have Mount Vernon. They work like your current system. You just pay base and volume. There's no strength-based until you get to be industrial strength, and then you pay for flow plus BOD plus TSS plus administrative costs. So you have like a negotiated rate. LaConner is the other example I have here, and they are more simple. They have average and above average strength. So there's different ways to go about it. Marysville is another one that I have on, didn't put on here. That's interesting. They have the 5 categories, and if you are a restaurant without a grease trap, which is very, very high, those customers pay a surcharge. In addition to their high strength category, they pay a surcharge. It's about 80% of the volume rate. So there's lots of ways to go about it. So here's a summary of the alternatives, kind of putting it together. Alternative A, we looked at how much BOD is in the low category versus the medium versus the high. I'm saying BOD, but BOD or TSS. And then calculate what those rate differentials should be based on those calculations. And what that be, the high went up to $9.45 from your current $5.40. That seemed high. I mean, that would be very noticeable to those customers. The goal in all of this is to come up with the same amount of revenue, or very similar revenue, not to get new money for the city, but to reallocate who's paying for that use of the plant. So B is the one where I knocked the high down so that we came up with a similar amount of revenue. And then it was able to go to $7. So then you have $4, $5.40, and $7. The C, and that was the one that we've just talked through. C was if you were to use the high rate up to $9.45 and allow a credit or some sort of adjustment, say for restaurants that have approved, properly maintained, some way of demonstrating proper maintenance for grease devices. They could have a credit. In thinking about how you do this, that adds an extra wrinkle in terms of how, try to be simple, straightforward administration. But then you would go to the $9.45 in that case to the high, and those that have the approved devices that are properly maintained could, drop down to the next category, to the $7. And those are different ways to look at that. So that's how we could go about putting something into place here. And the question is for the council, do you want to pursue this, and if so, what direction?
Katie, can I go back to this pie chart? I want to make sure that I understand
Please.
it. So is this saying that the 24% of users who are high concentration producers are 47% of the volume discharged?
Yes, of the commercial customers.
Okay, got it. And in combined accounts, where we're looking at the highest concentration users, are those typically paid by the building owner or by the business? Or
I would think it would be building owner, because when we looked at the list of the type of businesses that are in there, they have only one water meter that they're sharing. So I would think that would be the building owner. Or a primary business.
Yeah, because I'm trying to imagine a combined account where you have somebody who's a very low user and somebody who's a high user, and then how do you make that fair, for lack of a better...
And what we would want to do is tie it to, the water meter, because that's where you're getting the water usage, and that's where your sewer bill goes. So it would be looking at that to make sure that it was easy to administer and very straightforward.
Kind of off the subject, what we're doing, what is the BOD and the TSS, and what are they, and how do you determine out of which business what that level is?
The BOD and the TSS is what Kevin was talking about earlier, the biological oxygen demand and the suspended solids.
And how do they determine what business is putting out a comparative volume? Do they, at their discharge into the sewer line, do they come through and they take samples and monitor it on occasion, or how do they determine what's going to be low, what's medium, what's high?
They can do the sampling to check that, but the reason we came up with this list is this is one that has been determined very specific to the businesses and is used down at the Lake Haven Utility District very successfully, and they have such a mix of businesses, but others will have it described as the SIC codes or standard, whatever the new one is, standard industrial classification, that you can go by business and pretty much put them into that classification. I don't believe there's any specific table that does that, but when you look around at the different jurisdictions, they're all fairly similar. So the engineers, I'm sure, must know something.
So the goal, Rick, is to be able to presumptively classify businesses without actually having to test every business.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is not every business has the physical capability to be tested. For example, you might be a business that's been here for 50 years. Your sewer goes out 10 feet deep, and there's no clean out, there's no vault. So where would we pick it up? The next manhole down, but anybody upstream has already diluted it or made it, or concentrated it. So that's the challenge. For a new industrial customer coming in, let's say a chicken processor or something of that nature, we would very likely require a sampling vault to be part of their connection process. So that way the crew could go out randomly or at specified intervals and actually take samples, take them back to the lab, and see what they're putting into the system. But for just the run-of-the-mill, people who've been around or new smaller businesses, that expense would be unnecessary.
I'm just concerned because I've heard it all the time how we compare with our neighboring cities, just like you said earlier. Now, you're telling me that only Burlington uses different strains?
No. Anacortes does.
Now, is there I've been here long, we're always reinventing the wheel and stuff. There's no standardized where, I see where you're making these different businesses, different low, medium, high.
Yep.
There's no, do you make a new one for every city you come to, or you just, this is what everybody uses? You'd think the...
There isn't one that everybody uses is the problem.
Okay.
And what I was looking at was the definitions of, is your low category up to 300 or up to 350? Is your medium category up to 500 or, how do we do that? Because your code goes up to 500 right now, that fit in with the Lake Haven, their very specific ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that was 1 and 2. It fit with those. And they had very specific list of types of businesses that fit into each of those codes. Then we were trying to get one less category for you, so Lake Haven's 3 and 4 we put into the high.
So, bottom line, I hope when you guys decide that we're competitive with our neighbors. I don't want to see us being, $50 or $40 a business higher than, because you'll hear about it.
Did I hear you say that the idea was not to raise money, to keep it at the same income level?
Correct.
So basically what we're talking about is we have a system that people accept. People always complain it's too high price, but that's a given. So we've got a system that people already accept. We don't want any more money, but we're going to start changing rates on different people and upsetting some, and a handful will get, it's kind of like hitting a beehive with a stick for no reason.
I thought that so really it's mostly restaurant businesses and heavy use, and maybe even restaurants without traps, like grease traps, are the ones that are going to be hit the hardest, and it doesn't even, to me, look like it's all that hard, but isn't that right? And it's going to save residents money.
This will not affect residential customers at all.
I see.
It's just on the commercial.
Okay, got it.
It would save your low-use commercial, so your quintessential commercial office, your gift shop downtown, well, they'd probably fall under the minimum anyway. So a salon,
surveyors.
Somebody, yeah, but they flush a lot, so they use some water. They're going to save money, as you can see in the example, where the higher user. So the goal, though, was really the question the council presented was one of internal fairness. That's what got this whole conversation started, was the idea that you're letting some people contribute a lot and pay the same as some people who contribute a little. And so that's why this is coming back to you. There is no question that there's nothing in the budget about this, so we're not anticipating more revenue. If you say just leave it the way it is, we move on. But this is really the last piece of the puzzle of what we hired Katie to do earlier in the year to bring back to the council. Now, if you don't want to go that route, you want to keep what we have now, which is you've got a bit of an inequity between your residential base rate and your commercial base rate, and then you've got the issue of strength. The other piece that we don't want to lose is our code currently is very weak on the issue of a large processor coming in. So it would be good to at least have the capacity to have the ultimate high-strength user so we can go in and negotiate a direct contract. This is a pickle plant, chicken processor, whatever. It's something like that, which we wouldn't mind having, I don't think, in town, but at least under this structure, it would be nice to be able to ensure that we're not giving up much or all of our sewer plant capacity without willfully engaging in that decision-making. And then the last piece is we do also want to encourage businesses to have grease interceptors. The hospital is high on the list. You can see why they have such a big impact. They're running a lot of grease out, and it costs the city money. I mean, we go down there and put grease-eating bugs out at the pump station on a twice-a-month basis.
Yeah, it's about twice a month.
Straight-up cash that's totally unnecessary for our system to spend because they won't manage their solids that they're dumping into the system. So, this would be an economic incentive for them to do what our code says they should be doing already.
I agree.
I don't get it. The code says they should be doing it already, and they're not?
Correct.
Then that's our fault.
We could do a better job enforcing. Yeah, there's no question about that.
But if this thing's not to raise any money, and there's 138 customers, like I say, you're just hitting a bee's nest with a stick just to move the deck chairs.
Katie, would you mind flipping back to the pie chart page? I think might have been the previous slide. You actually delineated the number of services by low, medium, and high.
Yep.
Maybe you don't have that on there. In the paper copy that we've got, you've got a chart there that gives 78 services. I'm just how we use it. We're going to see who was impacted. Of the 138, there's 78 low, which would actually see a bit of a reduction, right?
Yep.
That's 57% of the accounts. The medium, there's 16, and then of the high and unknown, there's another 44. So anyway, just to give you an idea, that it's not like all commercial users would see an increase. 57% would see a decrease.
Right.
That's why it's revenue neutral.
And also the ones that would get an increase probably, I would say maybe expected it long ago or know that they've gotten away with it this long. If we do it now, I feel like, it's just something, I feel like they're using the services. It's time. I don't know about hitting the bee's nest, but like you said, it's a decrease for quite a few businesses.
How are we protected in the current code for the excessively high, or is it mentioned?
Well, the current code has a 500 cutoff before. What's the trigger that?
Greater than 500 milligrams per liter.
But what's it?
Requires a special waste permit is what it says.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
But do we have a category that's written into the code for the excessively high, or what's the term we were using?
Well, that would be those, where you
Highest strength.
essentially sit down. So we don't have the presumptive categorization.
Because it's important to me that if somebody came in that was really going to swamp the system, that we were not reactive to that we've already thought about it and have a plan in place.
Yeah, the other piece of that's the volume. So, if you have somebody who wants to come in and use up, 100,000 gallons a day or some, significant amount, we want to make a conscious decision about whether you would trade the 1,000 residences for the cranberry processor or whatever it may be. So what we're looking for tonight is direction. So if that's a piece of the puzzle you'd like to see refined into an ordinance, let us know. If you want to see categorization like we've seen presented in an ordinance, let us know. It's up to your pleasure how you'd like to proceed.
Aaron, I'm curious why the ordinance, if there are required grease traps on certain types of entities, why that hasn't been enforced.
Well, we actually do go out and enforce grease traps through an inspection process, and Mark has had staff, the sewer plant's had staff, they've gone out, they do inspections. We haven't been able to get voluntary compliance from everybody, and maybe the message we're getting tonight is you'd like us to go ahead and use our capacity to penalize folks, which I do think we can under the code. There's essentially a catch-all that allows the mayor or the superintendent to create a rate for that type of application. We'll have to look more closely at that. For the most part, people have come on board. They go out and visit, and the issue for the hospital, I think, is probably the size. Northern State's another one I'm working on, and we're currently negotiating whether we institute some sort of a penalty rate or they just get the job done. So,
It seems like sooner or later they're going to have to do that anyway.
Yes.
I thought the health department checked on grease traps too for restaurants, things.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure. I think they like to see the commercial sink structure, but the grease trap itself is really about protecting the sewer system. So we go out and do grease trap inspections, and the other one were the oil water separators for parking lots into the storm drainage. Because not only do you have to have it, but you have to maintain it in accordance with a maintenance schedule that depends upon the unit and your level of usage. So it's a bit intensive.
I have a difficult time understanding this. When each of these flows, for example, the strip mall that's across from Cascade Middle School that includes those businesses that are mentioned, as I understand it, has one water meter, which means the business owner pays the fee for that water. So it won't make any difference to him because his bill's going to be the same. So actually, in essence, we're not really changing anything as far as the businesses are concerned. Now, my other concern coming in from the other side would be, how do we protect ourselves as a city for an extremely high usage? And I'm not sure this will do that.
Yeah, I think that's a different piece. That's the piece that Keith was talking about.
That's the piece I'm concerned about.
The strip mall scenario, though, I kind of disagree. I think that if I owned a strip mall and I had a bank on one end and a commercial restaurant on the other end, and as owner I just saw an increase in my rates, I would go back to my commercial lease that has the provision in it that says that if your business results in an increase, I'm going to come knock on your door, and we'd have that conversation, because those costs don't just get lost.
But usually it's in the rent, Aaron. Those businesses aren't going to be doing that. They're going to jack the rent up. So they'll charge for the restaurant more than they would charge for the nail place.
And that would work. Although I guess my experience has been different on commercial. Certainly on residential, it's in the rent. On commercial, because of the variability of it, it's often not in the rent. It would be part of a triple net calculation.
I don't know why they had one water.
Katie, in these calculations, does it take into account the number of parking sites where cars might be dripping oil or gas or something that's going to run into?
No, that would go into the, exterior, into the stormwater system, and that would be concerned for the stormwater system, but this is just piped into the sewer system.
Okay.
All right, so it sounds like there's some interest in dealing with the large possibility of a processor. It sounds like there's some interest in us utilizing our enforcement capability. So,
Well, if a large processor came in, wouldn't they have to do a SEPA or something bigger?
And you have plenty of time.
Can't you catch them there?
Well, it's a little problematic, it seems to me, once they've scouted the location. And on
To
the
change
one
the rules
hand,
on them.
on the one hand, you're saying, we sure welcome you to town. On the other hand, we're going to lay it on you over here.
Well-
So it's nice to know what the landscape is when they first knock on the door.
Yeah, so you need to have something in place ahead of time, but I don't know why you couldn't catch them when they come in and go, I'm going to build this, and whoa, and then you can come back and, tell them, hey, that's going to put a big capacity impact on us, but
Those things are, if you're a business, they're better to know up front. It's better for our people to say, this is what it's going to be, because what businesses really hate is, this is what it's going to be, and here's another one. And that's why it's best to have it spelled out in advance.
But you get a big processor come in, the first thing they're going to do is go ask the city what the deal is. They're not just going to come in and say, oh boy, that's a sweetheart deal, build the thing.
And it would be nice to know what the deal is. That would be useful to have some idea of at least the framework for the deal.
So you're talking just having a high volume thing.
Yeah, it would just
like
be-
this, like I say, that's just moving, what you're talking about here is moving the deck chairs around and then ticking off the handful of people that pay more.
That's this proposal. I would articulate it as internal equity, but yeah, it could have that effect.
When you get into equity in government, that's kind of like, I love you.
Yeah, well, you said the same thing on the residential, volume base.
That's right.
So no, I understand what you're saying.
Because anytime the government starts talking about fairness, look out.
I can drop down into the...
So the restaurants basically would just look at an increase of about $48 a month.
The amount would depend on how much water they used.
Okay. So that's basically...
So if they use a lot of water, then they would have a bigger impact.
Okay.
I know one company who happens to be a friend of mine and talks to me. He raised his rates, he just might move out of town, and he's hoping to get a big contract. So, there's a lot of companies out there that are hanging by the skin of their teeth. Things aren't as rosy as the newspaper wants to say they are.
Well, think about, other businesses that might want to come in, and maybe it could be paying less, but they have to basically subsidize, a restaurant.
And maybe we don't have very many businesses here to be running out, so I know one that'll probably leave if you raise his sewer rates,
So,
That might be.
anybody else's opinion? Are you?
Yeah, I know you know who it is.
Rex, Keith?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with Kevin's analogy that, especially for the small number of accounts, that it's not worth stirring up a big nest with this proposal, but I do want to see some work done in the code for the excessively concentrated stuff. That's how I feel about it.
I would be in the same position, too.
Yeah, I would like to see possible enforcement on the codes regarding grease traps.
Rick,
There's not enough here to change it.
What's your opinion?
what's your feeling?
Yeah.
Same?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like it wants to keep the same. You got direction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
So that means Katie came and the rates did not go up.
Okay, we will go to,
Here comes Tony.
okay.
Tony Swain, 714 Sap Road. Is this water usage thing affecting single-family houses too?
This was just on commercial, and it sounds like they want to keep it just the way it is.
Yeah. Because single-family houses, probably 40% of their water never hits the sewer anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one question I had listening to all this.
We're not going there. That's done.
Okay.
Didn't we get that special Packard car washing penalty rate in?
Just put it out in the rain, Tony.
Yeah, it'll tonight.
Well, that's right, I wanted to check that.
We're going to new business. This will be a first reading the budget, and I assume this will be from Patsy.
The ordinance, which is on page 47 of your packet, summarizes the budget amounts for each fund as detailed in the mayor's 2016 preliminary budget, which was presented and discussed at the work session just last week, I believe. All funds are balanced according to council goals, and the charts that are attached to the ordinance in the packet are exactly the same as those that are in the preliminary budget. They were included today so that citizens could have a better chance to look at the different charts, graphs, and look at fund totals and just see what the revenues and expenditures are made up for each fund. Public copies of the line item budget are available in the finance department, and the line item budget is also on the city's website under...
Is that this?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the one that was handed out last at the work session. Mm-hmm. And then the city website under finance documents, the 2016 mayor's preliminary budget is there as well. After last week's meeting, are there any questions from the council, or are there any direction on things you would like changed in the mayor's budget? This is the first read, and then your next meeting would be the second read.
Any?
Cut the budget in half.
Anything else? Okay, we're done with the first reading. We'll go to annual utility rate increased by the CPI, which is the first reading. That would be Aaron.
Yeah, so in your packet will be three different ordinances. All three of them increase the rates of the three utilities by 1.61%, which is the measure of inflation that the city utilizes. That's the consumer price index for Seattle, Bremerton, Tacoma, for all urban, is it all urban workers? Yeah, all urban workers. CPIU, Seattle, Bremerton, Tacoma. So that's the year-over-year increase. The only deviation in there would be on the solid waste. The roll-off hauling fee would go up, and I see I have a blank in there. It goes up, I think, about $9. It's like $161 currently. Leo wanted to request that you increase that all the way up to $170 to reflect market conditions. The other deviation would be on the commercial recycling. Since that's brand new, we elected to not increase those rates by the 1.61%.
How much is the commercial recycling? Does anybody know?
Well, it varies. It depends on the product and the size. So it's there isn't just a single cost, but it would depend on whether you're what size of container, whether you're doing mixed cardboard, paper, or commingled recyclables. Because some of those have a commodity value. So depending on how clean your stream is, your cost will be less. And that it can get you that. There's a kind of a chart that shows all that if you...
Well, I know a house, they let you have as much, I have two big ones for $265.
Yeah.
But then a business, we'd probably charge $10 or $20.
Well, I can tell you.
I don't know what you'd charge, but I mean, you'd think it'd either be the same. I mean, because...
Well, a lot of them actually have dumpsters, so it's a whole different category.
But like the Eagles, I was at the Eagles the other day, and they were asking, can we get recycling? And I talked to Leo, and he said, yeah. But I didn't know how much, because they a lot of beer bottles, they have a lot that they would like to put in there instead of putting into the trash.
Yeah, so for commercial recycling, if you want a 95-gallon container with mixed recycling, it's $15.
Yeah, it's
if you
4 or
want
5 times than the house.
If you want to get a 2-yard container, it's $45, all the way up to an 8-yard, $140.
But if you haul it up to yourself, it's free.
Free.
So they'll probably just do it themselves.
Yeah, well, and that's part of why we keep that service, is for folks who want to recycle but don't want the convenience of the curbside pickup.
Huh.
We're not required to have recycling at home?
At home, you do. Yeah, well, you don't have to use it, but it's a courtesy service.
You said people that don't choose to have the convenience of curbside.
That was the business side. The mayor's example of the Eagles, I guess they haul it today, and for $15 a month, they could have convenient curbside pickup. So.
Okay.
Cardboard is cheaper, so you can get a 2-yard container for $20 cardboard, mixed paper's $25, mixed recycling's $45. And glass, of course, is a net loser for us. It doesn't have any real commodity value anymore.
I thought we decided to just put it in the trash.
Well, we didn't. We came close to asking you all to make that decision to take it out of our recycling, and I suspect you will see that in the future, but our waste management didn't give us a price variable. So if they were willing to take glass at no different cost, then why not, like you say, let's not poke the hornet's nest, we'll just leave it the same. But the other outfit we talked to was willing to charge us less to get rid of recyclables if the glass was removed from the stream. And I think you'll see that in the future. I think that'll come back.
Okay.
Well, I have just a question here. Yeah, on this 1.61%, how far away are we making any gains on the utilities that we're not whole on now?
No.
So we're just still stuck.
No, stormwater's gap is growing slightly this year. Where the budget increases the property tax subsidy and depletes the reserve fund to 0. Yeah, we're no different than the message I gave you last year and I think the year before. Without a rate increase, the stormwater utility is not going to be able to achieve its core mission.
Well, thank you for that dreary news. I know it's not new news, but hearing it again doesn't make it any more palatable.
Okay. You want to go to item 9? Utility tax on water?
Sure.
And then air?
This item comes back to you for consideration of a rate increase as a result of the effective rate we've collected. So just to back up, the City Council levied a 6% utility tax on water following the Wenatchee versus Chelan County PUD-1 case. This would have been in 2014. The PUD, under that case, has the ability to levy and so the tax, incidentally, is a tax on the PUD. So it's a tax on their gross revenue. The PUD has the ability to take their gross revenue and subtract out of that any portion of revenue that's related to fire flow. And that's their calculation. They own it. We haven't looked at it. We just trust that they do what is right. And so what they did was pulled out, I think it was about 20%. And the consequence then is that our 6% tax was converted to a 4.5% tax. So the effective rate, 4.5%. What this ordinance does is levies a 7.5% tax, which happens to be the same as our other utility taxes, but that 7.5% tax then would yield an effective rate of 6%. So it's kind of a long way of saying 6% means 6%. And that's really all this does is levies the effective rate that the council had intended to levy when it was first levied last year. And this is
What's the number that PUD said 25% went to fire?
About 20%.
20%. So 80% of your calls are aid calls, and those other 20% you must really use water.
Well, for them, it's not just the water usage, it's actually the water capacity. So it's the size of the pipe, it's all the plugs in the ground, it's the tanks, it's over-designing it to be ready to accommodate a firefight.
In a way, it's kind of like equipment rental, the equipment rental, and the water's the last thing that counts.
Yeah, and they don't actually charge us for water for firefighting, so there is some loss there, although it's not huge. The manager, I did talk to the manager of the PUD and let him know that this was an issue on your agenda. He chuckled and said Alicia Hushka had called him the day before to let him know that Mount Vernon had a similar item on their agenda to increase it to get to the effective rate that they were trying to get to. I don't know what that council has done, if it's even come up yet. But he told me before, when that fire was going on in Mount Vernon, and they had, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 ladder trucks down there? 3 ladder trucks, and everything was opened up. They went to their command center. They could literally see all the water moving through the system, and all the compensating pressure to make that all work. The amount of water that goes through without damaging the system. So I know that there's true cost for them to have that type of water availability. I don't know if it's 20% or 22 or 18%. I don't think it really matters. If I could go back in time, I probably would have written that ordinance to say an effective rate of 6%.
But what I thought was going on is you take my water bill that went through my water bill and add the 6 or whatever it was to it. But you're not doing that.
No, they do that. So our tax is a tax on the PUD. The PUD elects then to pass along that tax to you on your water bill. But it is not actually a tax on you, the consumer. It's a tax on the business of the PUD.
We pay it.
And how they pass that along is up to their commissioners.
Have you figured out the average cost to a household? Because when you talk percentages and you talk to people, they want to know, is it going to cost me 30 cents? Is it going to cost me $2 per month on an average bill? Are we saying a $50 bill would be a 7% increase?
No.
Would be $3.50, or what are we saying?
No, you're saying a $50 bill, there would be a 1.5% increase, so it would be 75 cents.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
And that would be $50. Of course, they bill bi-monthly as well.
Right.
So it just depends. In my case, it's usually about $100, so $1.50.
My daughter's home, so
and that's 7% approximately.
Well, remember, 7%, the 7.5% that we've proposed would result in a 6% tax. They're already paying 4.5%. So what we're talking about is 1.5%.
Okay. And on a $50 bill, that'd be a quarter.
75 cents.
Okay, 75.
Huh.
Well, I guess the question for the council, since this is in the mayor's draft budget, but the question for you is whether you'd like to see this proceed on. We've got a public hearing scheduled for your next meeting, but of course, if you're not interested in it, you can always jettison this concept tonight, or you can take it to the next meeting and have a public hearing and do with it what you will. I guess the only other thing I'd mention, of course, is the purpose of the fund. All of these dollars go into the City Council's strategic reserve fund. So while it's in the mayor's budget, it's budgeted as revenue. That fund had 2 purposes. One was accelerated debt repayment to achieve cost savings to the Sedro-Woolley public in the long term. The other piece of that was to have dollars available for the council to directly invest in primarily infrastructure or business development. So having some dollars available when that business knocks on the door and says, well, we don't want to pay for a light at that intersection. you might have in a fund $100,000 or $200,000 that would match the cost of getting something put in that would make the difference between them locating, creating jobs, paying taxes in Sedro-Woolley, or going to Burlington.
What was this tax supposed to raise per year?
Well,
Like
135,000.
120?
135,000.
It was off.
Ish. Yeah, well, that's because we didn't really know. You know, the PUD's estimates of their systemic revenue were difficult. The PUD never really defined their customer base in sync with our geographic boundaries. So for them, they were giving us a best guess, and really it's taken the better part of a year for the PUD working with Patsy and the other folks in finance to sort out who's in the city and who's out.
Well, I want to see this move forward because we already decided that this was worth doing, and now we've been kind of thwarted by idiosyncrasy in the system. So we didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve. I think we should go ahead and try and achieve it.
Yeah, it's a first reading. It will be there next meeting. Let's go to item 10, agreement with CGI Communications. I guess this would probably be Aaron. Who is? I don't see where it says.
So,
page 7.
What I've got in the packet for you is just a flat-out agreement. And this is a company that I learned about at a conference in Seattle. They do something kind of unique, which is they don't charge cities for their service. They embed advertising in videography that lives on your website. So this type of contract would normally not be something that would come to you for your approval because there's no cost. However, advertising on the city website, even though it would be embedded in a third party's videography, seems to me to be a significant policy question for you to decide. So I wanted to play just an example. Hopefully it'll work here so you can see what they do, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the program. Let's see if Cheyenne pops up.
Hi, I'm Rick Cason, and I serve as the mayor of the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming state capital. I welcome you to our city, where we like to refer to ourselves as the community of choice. Cheyenne is named after the great Native American tribe of Cheyenne, and we were founded on July 4th, 1867, at which time we had a population of 400 people. Today, we have a metropolitan population of approximately 74,000 hospitable and friendly people. Although Cheyenne may be considered a small city, we have large city attributes, such as performing arts center, many family activities, wonderful youth programs, a great variety of eating and shopping establishments, exceptional educational and health systems, and a quality of life that is unmatched. We are only minutes away from great outdoor activities, including hiking and biking, fishing and hunting, snowmobiling, and so much more. Cheyenne is also a great place to do business with no corporate income tax, no personal income tax, overall low operating costs, and a workforce that has a very strong work ethic. Again, I welcome you to and ask you to join us in Cheyenne, where you too can live the legend.
So one of the things that's changed is Google has changed the structure of their search engines to prioritize city government websites first. So it used to be you had to fight for the turf and embed all the top secret code words or pay people or however that worked. Now, if you search Sedro-Woolley, your top site will be our website. So a couple of things we're doing about that. One is we have in the mayor's draft budget a rebuild of the city website to make it look newer, fresher, more interesting. More importantly, we're restructuring how the content gets placed on the website to allow individual departments to directly access their pages and keep content fresh. So our hope is that by deleting the bottleneck at IT, which he'll be happy to have, by the way, individual departments can take responsibility for their face on the web just as they do in their departments. So this company has, I think it's around 3,000 cities they've done this type of work for. I noticed on their website tonight, Pasco, Washington is one of their newest. They're all sorts of size ranges. They come out, do all the video work, do the interviews. I think you get 4 videos under the contract. They do one kind of like this, a welcome to the city overview. they do education, they do healthcare, and they do one for the service clubs, highlighting what they do. And then they will attempt to sell videography or video-based ads that would be embedded onto the website. So essentially, we agree to put these on our website, and if you watch it, you'd be able to click on the ad and see, a dental office advertising whatever they're doing, or a realtor. What's interesting about this company is if they don't sell any ads, they'll still produce the videos. So there's kind of a no-risk scenario. But, if they do sell the ads, then obviously you're going to have videos on your website with advertisements for local business. So that's really the question for you is, should we pursue it? Seems to me it falls right in line with our marketing efforts with our community magazine, which also has advertising, but we hadn't talked about it, so I'll leave that to your judgment.
What kind of control would we retain, for example, if they advertise with somebody who did something terrible, I don't know, that we didn't want associated with the city, and all of a sudden we've got an ad for that?
They actually had some protection in the agreement. I'm trying to remember what it was.
No, I think that would be fine, but I guess it's unlikely based on what's around here, but it'd be nice to have a little protection.
Say somebody within the city should approve it before it appears.
Yeah, so they literally have a one-page contract, and what they've got is they would honor any request for termination of sales upon 30-day notice, and only if the city continues to provide the community video program linkage from its homepage for the duration of the agreement.
Would the city have any approval of the content?
Of the advertisement or of the videos themselves?
The advertisement, both.
I don't think on the advertisement that was something that would be, I don't remember us talking about us reviewing their advertisement. That's kind of their book of business.
Well, they have one right here. It says you have a choice of what can go in there. Yeah. Your community has a say in the type of business that are featured.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, is that what we're thinking about?
That's what I'm thinking about, yeah. Other than that, I think I don't have any other reservation. Anybody else?
I think it might spice up the website.
Well, good point.
Yeah.
Well, if you like it.
I don't have a problem with it. Does anyone have a problem?
That would be one for a motion to authorize, then, if you want to proceed. I know they're excited to jump in and do something for us.
When I go to websites, if I can click on something, watch that, or click on something and read it, I'll do the watching.
Not me.
I'm the other way.
Yeah, me too.
That went to school in Mount Vernon, though.
So do I.
That's the problem. Okay.
So what's the motion to approve the
contract with CGI Communications for the community video program?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Councilmember Wagoner, a second by Councilmember Cornegay to approve the agreement with CGI Communications. Good?
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, passes unanimously. Okay, I guess it's committee reports time. We'll start with Chief Tucker.
Some of you may have heard of our ice cream cake incident that happened last Sunday. We had a theft of an ice cream cake from Dairy Queen last Sunday night about 8:30. They pointed out the subject leaving the scene of the Dairy Queen. Officer went and confronted the subject, who jumped a fence in behind truck vault. and was hiding from, trying to hide from the officers. Officer's not exactly sure if the subject was waiting to ambush him or just trying to hide, but when confronted and the subject became really erratic, and next thing you know, the officer's rolling around the ground fighting with him. The subject kicked the officer several times, and a second officer jumped in, helped subdue the subject, and we ended up arresting the guy, but we ended up losing an officer for up to about a month. We're not sure. He hurt his thumb during the fight. Subject was, of course, under some sort of recreational stimulants, and some paraphernalia was found on him. But he was also, I think he had a couple of warrants for his arrest, so we have a subject in custody, and this is all over I guess a really good ice cream cake. I don't know, but it was this guy's facing some pretty serious felony charges over this.
So did he go to jail?
Oh yeah, he's sitting in the bucket right now.
Now his injuries, is the city paying for him now? I mean, because of all the new agreements, how does his injuries? Who gets to pay for that?
Who is injured?
Oh, it's the subject's not injured. No, it's the officer.
Okay.
But the city is paying for the officer's injury, but he's working light duty now.
I mean, just for information, say the guy got hurt, the bad guy got hurt, what would the city's responsibility be under the new agreement?
Yeah, we own that. If you break him while you're arresting him, that's still our problem. So if
forever? I mean, for the whole...
Well, I think it depends on the nature of the injury, whether he could potentially fall into Affordable Care Act coverage or something like that. But if you're patching him up in order to get him into jail, or there's ongoing medical costs as a result of that injury, those would be the city's. But if he gets beat up, or if he gets hurt in jail, that would be a jail fund cost.
Or if he has a medical problem.
Or if he has a pre-existing medical problem, that's now part of our shared costs.
So the city's not on the hook for that. That's just a good opportunity to ask.
Right. The other thing I got is that you may have been seeing some regular Facebook updates. Detective Eaton is trying to keep our Facebook page kind of fresh and up to date with local things of interest. And finally, Mark and I went to a senior officials workshop down in Everett, and it was geared toward a catastrophic type incident and the management therein. And one of the things that they brought up was getting some of our elected officials involved in some of these incidents. I'm planning on doing some tabletop exercises in the near future. My first one is next week up at Northern State. We're going to work out some of the bugs during that one, but we'd like to get some of the council, mayor, any of the other officials involved in that. Part of the reasoning for that is any sort of serious crisis or catastrophic issue is probably going to get possibly international media attention. We could have the mayor, getting calls from the president of the United States, the governor, could be pretty much anybody, foreign media. And we kind of all want to be on the same sheet of music on how we would deal with that, because there are certain things that, say, Dean and I and maybe Mark would deal with on a kind of a unified command structure, but once you start dealing with stuff on a different level, like having the governor show up, we need to have some other, backstops in place for helping manage that. So look for some of that in sometime in 2016. We'll be working up some plans for the Northern State grounds and all the schools for some crisis management and active shooter type training, and getting you all involved in some of that.
Teach you how to talk to Bill O'Reilly or something.
Very well could be. Actually, we may call you out of retirement to come do that for us.
Keith will do fine.
Okay. No, but it would be good to have that involved, and making sure that when we're doing this, that we all know exactly what we're supposed to be doing, and we get on a kind of a similar front, because that can be very important for the whole community, depending on the incident. If it appears that your officials and the people in charge know what they're doing and they're speaking appropriately, that can sure help calm the public down if there's a problem.
Yeah.
I had another question real quick. Did I read, I'm not sure if this was really old news, that the James Market incident, that guy was also caught? James Market when, I can't remember.
Yeah, just the recent sentencing of the last subject. They finally came.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, they're all got all their sentencing, all their court finagling done, and I don't remember what the last guy got, but there was a little bit of holdup on some of that. They were trying to get the husband back from, I believe he was overseas in Korea, and trying to wait till he got back if he was interested in coming back for any sort of sentencing. But yeah, they finally worked out a deal with the attorneys and courts and all that.
Thank you.
Chief Klinger.
This weekend we'll be completing our first county recruit academy that Sedro-Woolley ran. They'll have their graduation exercise Saturday evening. Unfortunately, we don't have anybody from Sedro-Woolley actually going through the academy. We didn't have any new volunteers for that, but we've got 11 others from throughout the county and the district that'll be going through it. And also our ambulance that's down getting the re-chassis is about, I would say, probably close to halfway done. We do have the ability to see what's going on with it on the website. If anybody's interested, I can give you that website and you can take a look and see where it's at in the process. That's it, Mayor.
John?
Well, our new building inspector and plans examiner has been on duty for 9 days now, and he's doing a fantastic job. Tony Sconin is his name, and you'll see him around. He's doing great work for us. Glad to have him, and I think everybody that he's doing work for is glad to have him around too. We're able to offer a much higher level of service now, and I think that's instantly recognized in the development community. On the northern state front, things are starting to come to a head here. The Planning Commission is holding a public hearing on the sub-area plan for what is now called the Center for Innovation and Technology, also known as Northern State. So the sub-area plan and the planned action ordinance is going to be receiving a public hearing on November 17th at the Planning Commission level. Following that, we're going to be having that come to the City Council on December 2nd to have a first read, followed by December 9th, final second read on the planning with the City Council, assuming that everything moves nicely. The final environmental impact statement for the center is going to be available Monday, technically, but it's on our website as of this afternoon. So feel free to check it out. We also sent some of those documents to all of the City Council members, and you may have received that already. The Planning Commission is busy on November 17th with that public hearing, so we're waiting until December 15th to have a public hearing on our urban growth area expansion project. At the last Planning Commission meeting, which was a special Planning Commission meeting held on November 3rd, the Planning Commission looked at maps and filtered through all of the public comments that have been received over the past several months and put together a proposal for an urban growth area expansion and some associated rezone. It's actually just one parcel rezoned within the city. And I'm putting together a map of all that and sending notices tomorrow, hopefully. So should be arriving, people that have participated in the process should be arriving in their mailboxes early next week. And we'll be notifying property owners whose property may be recommended for inclusion into the urban growth area. And then next-door neighbors to those people, just to make sure that everybody's abreast of the situation and understand what's going on, and has their opportunity to participate in the public hearing process. After that December 15th hearing, it will come to the City Council for their recommendation in the new year. We won't have time after December 15th to get to the City Council, so we'll have to wait till the new year. And then if the City Council so wishes, then we could move that forward to the county so they can go through their Planning Commission and County Commissioners review process as well. And that, of course, is dependent on how the Planning Commission's hearing goes and what the City Council feels of the proposal, which I realize you don't have in front of you to make any decisions, but it'll be coming to you in the new year. And unless you have any questions on that, that's all.
Is that the final name for Northern State?
The Center for Innovation and Technology.
That's the final name, or still working on it?
Or is it Technology and Innovation?
Still working on it.
Well, that's the current name.
That's a current, totally unacceptable name.
It seemed better than the Center for Innovation and Technology in the Pacific Northwest.
All done, John?
I'm done, thank you.
Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. We've been very busy the last couple of weeks accepting qualification statements from consultants for 3 different projects we've been talking about. We closed on the wastewater treatment plant structure and equipment assessment on the 5th, and we have made a tentative selection on that, which we'll be bringing to you at the next council meeting for that. I'm still calling references, or I'd let you know the actual name. I'll finish that tomorrow. The Fruitdale Arterial Improvements Projects, we also closed that on the 5th, and we are in the process of reviewing those statements. The selection committee is meeting tomorrow morning to do a first cut. We received 6 statements, and we'll hopefully narrow that down some and then begin interviews next week. We're tentatively looking at the 19th on that. And hopefully we'll also be able to bring that to you the next time so we can get started on that. And then the final one is the Cascade Trail phases 1A and 1B. That one was just for support services to assist David with the design of that. It was for geotechnical and surveying and environmental. That closed today, and we'll be doing the selections on those over the next week and recommending those as well. So you'll see a lot of contracts coming to you at the next council meeting. We're still heavily involved in the design process on the Jameson project. We've resubmitted another version of the channelization plan to DOT for approval yesterday, and just moving ahead with that. Still looking to see what will happen on November 20th with the TIB applications that would fund that project and a few others around town. So I have plenty of news to share with you, and I hope it'll be good after the 20th. And then finally, I mentioned to you our problem with the Klinger Street Bridge over Brickyard Creek. Last time, we were able to get an expedited hydraulic project approval from Fish and Wildlife and went in between rainstorms, and were able to get in at a time when it was dry, and were able to, with a low clearance excavator with a thumb on it, get underneath of the bridge and actually restore the banks and reestablish the creek. And so that's stabilized for the winter, and we're going to keep a close eye on that as the waters run through that this year. Next summer, after it's dry again, we'll go in under a new permit and actually do some armoring of the riprap so this doesn't recur on us again. So that's pretty much it for us for right now.
Thank you. Aaron?
A couple quick reminders. The next City Council meeting's on a Tuesday before Thanksgiving. The jail groundbreaking ceremony is tomorrow at high noon at the location of the jail. We will have 2 vacancies on the Planning Commission coming up. The notification's on the website, so if you know of anybody, please get the word out there so those potential candidates can can get over to the new mayor. It's on the website. It's also will be published in the Herald. So the request is for any names to come in, I think, December 22nd. So that packets can be put together for shortly after the new year. We've got a couple different trainings. The Association of Washington Cities newly elected officials, elected officials essentials conference, whatever it is, will be here on December 5th. I've got 2 of the newly elected people confirmed, 3, and I wasn't sure if I talked to Jermaine earlier, and Brenda, just wanted to extend that invite to you. I'm not sure if both of you had a chance to go, if you want to go. I know Brenda said, you said yes, right? Yeah, I thought so. So Jermaine, and really if anybody else wants to go, it's just a unique opportunity since it's right here in Sedro-Woolley. So that's December 5th. And then the last one, nothing needed tonight, but the legislative conference is coming up already in January 27th and 28th. So oftentimes we have 2 council members that go, so it might be good to start thinking about who might want to go to that. Quick update on the library. We had a productive meeting this afternoon of the Sedro-Woolley Public Library and the District Library. It included staff from both libraries, trustees from their library, 2 trustees, the mayor-elect, me, Councilwoman Kinzer, and then we also had the chairperson of the Library Board of Trustees for the Sedro-Woolley Public Library. We met for about 2 hours, and it was a productive conversation, and we'll be meeting again here in 2 weeks. So I continue to be optimistic that there are opportunities out there to do something together that neither of us could do separately, and we're exploring those. So it's very positive. And then lastly, we've started getting some iPads out. So Rick, we've got you on the list to get one of them there newfangled devices. We'll get one your way. And my goal is to begin January 1st with no paperless packets. So everybody will be here in January. We'll have you a new iPad, certainly by the beginning of December, so you can work through those and get that taken care of. And that's all I've got.
Patsy?
This year, the state audit was a financial statement only audit. We didn't have sufficient federal money for a federal single audit, and it wasn't, it was an off year as far as the compliance audit goes. So we had a 2-member team that was on site 4 days. So it was actually rather pleasant to have such a short audit. They will be continuing to do a little bit of work off-site, but we'll let you know when there's an exit conference and get you all the results.
Kevin?
Nothing.
Maine?
I just wanted to mention that last weekend I was able to go on a ride-along with our police department, and I'm always so impressed. The main reason I wanted to go was to check out the bar scene on a weekend night, because I understand we can't have windows broken every few months, and I think that we should continue to have the conversation of some solutions as to what to do with our downtown atmosphere in the evening. I was really impressed that we did walk through quite a few of the bars, and there were no issues at that time, and I encourage that quite often. And
what time was that?
I want to say it was around maybe 11 or so.
That's usually when it starts.
It was around 11 or so. And they say they do that quite often, so I just kind of want to encourage those random walkthroughs, at least for now, until we come up with some other solution, which I really hope that we're going to do. And also, I just wanted to remind everyone about the Community Thanksgiving Dinner. I don't think we'll have a meeting. Well, we will have a meeting before that. But they could actually use some contributions right now. Stephanie Lucabo, I don't really have her. I left my phone home, so I don't have her phone number right now. But I'm not sure how people would get a hold of, or who they would get a hold of for that, or Tammy, or me, I guess. I'm kind of helping with that too, but we could use some more donations, cash donations or food donations for that event. We're expecting about 450 people. We won't have Bill Everling this year, unfortunately. He has some issues with his throat and won't be able to speak. But he did tell me that he would like his street redone on Evans Road. So that's it. And actually it's at 12:30 to 3 on Thanksgiving Day. And they could use some volunteers as well. That's it.
Brenda?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, being in the library meeting today, it was pretty exciting to see entities coming together once again to try to come to agreements to bring a better good to our community. So that was exciting to me.
Keith?
Cubs play Saturday, 7 o'clock down at Olympic. That's down to Silverdale, so if you can make it down there, that'd be great. That's it.
Or you can listen to it on your buddies.
Or listen to it on the radio, yeah.
Internet. Hugh?
Nothing.
Richard?
I have a question. When are we doing the tree lighting ceremony? Thank you for bringing up the Cubs, because that reminded me. I just didn't want it to coincide again.
It's usually the same night.
It's December 5th.
Parade is Saturday the 5th.
And that's the same night as the lighting and everything.
If we go all the way.
If we go that far.
What do you mean, when we go that
If
far?
we're in state again, I'll be down there. Oh, we got an executive session?
We're lucky to have such problems. The parade conflicts with our awesome team.
It's about 15 minutes executive, and it's on a performance of a public employee, and it's RCW 42.30.111G. And there'll be no action. So, thank you.
You're going to need an Apple ID, an Apple account. You want to buy apps?
Yeah, well, I released that.
No apps for you.
Does the class come with it?
What is it? How do you do that? You just sign up for one?
You have to have an Apple Store account.
Do you have an iPhone, Brett?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second.
I know, right?
Well, I never turned this off. Oh, well, I never turned it off. So, yeah, we'll make a motion to adjourn. And all those in favor stand. We're out of here at 9:07. Yeah, I forgot.